welcome. It's nice to have you here. You know the routine, I suspect. This is relax into health, wealth, and happiness, which means that the benefit is, as the name suggests, health, wealth, and happiness. So health and wealth and happiness, they really all come down to the same thing, which is wholeness, which is what you are already, presently, before you think about it, while you think about it, and after you think about it. But before you think about it in particular, just notice that there's an indivisible present reality that cannot be grasped. And obviously that's who you are, because it's always here, even when all of the things that you imagine yourself to be are not here. Because you'll notice the things that you imagine yourself to be, they are transient. So they're unstable. There's no dependability to any of those things. But this underlying reality is always here dependably, so that in an instant when you forget to conjure the transient things, here you are in your indivisible wholeness. So you can relax into that health, wealth, and happiness, that wholeness that you are. Why? Because no effort is needed. All the effort is just to obscure this that you already are. There's no effort needed at all. If any effort was needed, then you'd be in trouble, because you'd have to constantly be doing something to maintain it. And the instant that you forgot or were unable to do whatever was necessary, then, oh no, you vanish. But it never happens. You're always here. You just think that you're not here sometimes because you identify with the things that come and go. So the opportunity here is to relax into the health, wealth, and happiness, the wholeness that you already are. And that's really the name of the game. So all you have to do is relax and receive the truth of who you are, which is already always available. So how do you relax? Well, those who are here live, you know, but as I often mention, sometimes people find this on YouTube and they will have no clue. Such a strange sort of thing to find yourself participating in, I imagine. So a little brief explanation is valuable, and it's helpful for all of us, because we can forget. We get so wrapped up in the things of our lives, and we think all kinds of other things, and so we lose sight of what it is to truly relax. So the relaxation that you're invited to here is an active relaxation. It's requires that you are present. So the kind of relaxation that many of us normally identify with or imagine is relaxation, is numbness. It's a overwhelm, exhaustion, fatigue, so that there's a zoning out. There's the system has become so overwhelmed that it can't do its work any longer, so it needs to just go offline. And the truth is, we're always present even then, but because of a lack of familiarity with that continuous self, we miss it, we overlook it, because there's all this activity, strain that we're mistaking for ourselves. And then all of a sudden it just shuts off and we say, oh, I'm relaxed. But there's no real relaxation there. There's just a numbness. And so this happens all the time. This is what happens in sleep for most people. And there is a certain potential for restoration there, but only to a certain extent, because for there to be a total restoration, there has to be an awareness of the continuity of the self so that it's not lost. Because I'm really going to go into it here. This is all just the preliminaries, but I guess I'll mention this just because it's coming up. The who, if you ask yourself this, who are you? You can come up with all kinds of ideas. There's seemingly no end to the ideas. We have an enormous capacity to imagine things. And the thing about all the things that we imagine is that they're always incomplete, because they have to be, because there has to be some sense of somebody who's observing or imagining, right? And so there always is a sense of incompleteness because there's a separation inherent in that process of imagining. There's someone who's imagining and there's what's imagined. And so there is, by definition, there has to be a sense of incompleteness, because there's not a merger of the one who's imagining and what's imagined. They're distinct, or we imagine that they're distinct. But as I've already hinted at, the who you really are at the deepest level is wholeness, which doesn't come and go. It doesn't depend upon anything. It's unconditional. And so there's no separation there. There's completeness. By definition, wholeness is complete. And so the who you are is not coming and going. Everything else is coming and going in you. So we think, by convention, we say, I went to sleep, but I don't remember anything in deep sleep. And then I had a dream, and I kind of vaguely remember some things about the dream a little bit, maybe, depending on the dream and circumstances. Sometimes we remember more and sometimes less. But we at least say, well, I remember something. There was something that happened. I remember that I dreamed. And then we say, but now I'm awake and now I'm here. So this is because we, out of habit, we identify with this idea of ourselves as this waking state character. If you examine it closely, you'll see that there is no such thing. It's just an idea. There's just an idea that says that there's a continuity to this waking state character, but in fact, there's nothing other than this present imagining. It's just that within this present imagining is an idea that this is continuous, that there's a past to it and there will be a future to it, and that this is extended through past and future. But actually, it's only an idea happening presently. But then you can see that this waking state character disappears in the dream state, and certainly it disappears entirely in the deep sleep state, the dreamless state. But as I say, I point out out of habit, because we identify with the idea of the waking state character, we dismiss, at least in the waking state, we dismiss that we were fully present in the dream and the deep sleep state. And so just because of that habit, we overlook something which is very important, which is that actually you are always present. There's no other possibility. If that wasn't the case, if there was not a continuity of presence that you are, then you couldn't say that you couldn't have any sense of any of this, because if you are this thing which is bound by time, how is there any one to be aware of this one who's bound by time, because it's disappeared before they're like it's gone now and then there's a new one, but who couldn't be any sense of the past one. So the one who you actually are is the one who's aware, who's continuous, who's always here, and is the same one who's present in the dream state and in the deep sleep state. So if you look and you just were to notice, what is it that is always the case in waking, dreaming, and deep sleep? We could say that deep sleep is sort of the common denominator. In terms of content, it has the least content. So that's like the common denominator, right? Because we could say maybe that dreaming has more content, more substance than deep sleep. Waking has yet more substance and content compared to dreaming and then deep sleep. But deep sleep has the least, so little that unless we're aware at a very subtle level, we would just say there's nothing there. But there's something there. Yogis will identify they say there's a causal body there. It's dormant. But everything arises from that, again, because it's the common denominator. So all of the dreaming and the waking state arise from that. It's just that in that deep sleep state, it's dormant. It's kind of a little bit philosophical, so I won't go into that. But just notice that there's the main point is that there's somebody who's here continuously, who's aware, who can say, I was asleep. The one you can say, I don't remember anything about it. But it's a bit of a deception. You remember entirely because you remember that you don't remember. You remember enough to know that there was something, there was some level of presence, but you just don't acknowledge it out of habit. So that's the common denominator. So can we just discover that that's always here, and then the rest of it is extraneous? We don't actually need to worry about it. You see, in deep sleep state, there's no worry at all, right? There's no concern about anything. All the concerns arise in the dreaming and the waking state. In the waking state, we say of the dreaming state, we say, "Oh, it was just a dream. How silly that I was so concerned about it." But in the dream, you were very concerned about it. Maybe depends on the dream. But if the dream was concerning to you, then you were concerned. It's only when you wake up that you say, "Oh, it was just a dream. How silly." But it's funnier that we don't do the opposite, right? It's funnier that when we go into the dream state that we don't say, "Oh, what a relief! It was just waking." Oh, I was taking it so seriously. It was so stressful. Oh, what a relief! It was just waking. But even better, right? If we could say in deep sleep, if we could say, "Oh, what a relief! It was just waking and dreaming." But now here, what a relief, isn't it? It's just such a relief. There's no worry, no concern, no anything. So it turns out the common denominator is really valuable. It gives us an enormous amount of what we really want in life. Don't we really want that relief? If you look at all the things that all the problems you're trying to solve in your life, well, start with all the problems. All the problems you're trying to solve, if the problems were gone, then wouldn't that be great? And then if you were to look and see that all of the things that you think you want on top of solving all the problems, actually, those have to do with solving problems too. We just imagine that they're not about solving problems. But if you didn't have any problems, you wouldn't have any, or if you didn't have a sense of any problem, you wouldn't have any desire for anything, which is the case in deep sleep. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that you should strive to always be in deep sleep. It's an interesting idea, but that's not necessarily what's most desirable. Perhaps what's most desirable is to be experiencing all of the states as though with that awareness of that common denominator, so that there's awareness that everything is coming and going from that causal state, so that there's no need to be concerned about any of it, because it's all just sort of appearing and disappearing. It's not to be, there's no reason to be concerned about it. So this is just the preliminaries. I wasn't really intending to go into all that, but I did. So there you go. But that's the level of relaxation that's possible. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that kind of restorative quality that is available to you in deep sleep, and that you could have that all the time? Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be a relief that you could be experiencing all of this, experiencing waking and dreaming, and yet without any concern, because there's an awareness that you are that common denominator that is present in all the states. I mean, traditionally, it's actually stated it's a fourth state, Turiya. Turiya means fourth, which is what is actually present in waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. I'm giving a kind of dumbed down version, just saying, deep sleep. But there's a subtlety there, which is just to say that there's something transcendent even of that causal body. There's something that's aware, that's unaffected by any of the things that are transient, by any of the objects of awareness. And that actually, there's even yet another kind of we'll call level of awareness, which is that not only is there this fourth state which is present in all of the other states, but that it's all one. So there's no need to be concerned about any of it at all. So that's the level of relaxation that's possible. That's what the invitation is. It's to actually relax that deeply. So that requires active participation. It's not something where you just zone out, because that would just be regular deep sleep, right? You just conk out and then you come to and you say, oh, I guess I was asleep. And then you just sort of overlook the whole thing, and it doesn't really help you because there's no integration. That's the point I'm trying to make here with a lot of words, blah, 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 blah. But just to say that we want to be actively present and aware and allowing for this deep relaxation, so that there can be an integration, so that there can be an awareness that I am that which is always continuously here. So that all of the activity continues. There will be ups and downs. That's the nature of the dynamic aspect of reality. You can't have this dynamic aspect of reality without up and down, because that's what its nature is. I've said this many times, I'll say it again. It's nature's vibration. Everything that we experience, thoughts are vibration. These are things that can be measured using devices, right? You can measure brain waves. And I don't know if you could, but a person who has the device and who knows what they're doing can measure brain waves, right? Sound can be measured as a vibration. Light is all vibration. So all of these things, all of our senses, all of the thoughts, all of the mental activity, all of everything that's happening that we experience is all vibration. So what is vibration? It's a movement up and down, or we could say whatever, side to side, but it's a movement. It's not normally we would graph it as a kind of wave, right? So there's up and down, up and down. So that's the nature of it. You can't have dynamic by virtue of its nature. You can't have dynamic experience without the up and down. The mistake that a lot of us try to make is we want to pin this dynamic experience to just the up. We want to get rid of the down, but it's an impossibility. It has to move, has to happen that way. But it's because there on some deep level, there's an awareness that what I want deeply is that restorative quality of that which is unaffected, that which is not up and down, that which is not harmed or affected by any of that, that doesn't have anything to fear, that has such a profound okayness because it's uninvolved. So we know that we want that. The mistake is that we're trying to make that happen where it cannot happen, because this dynamic experience is always up and down. There's always fluctuation. But what's possible for us is to actually find what we're looking for where it exists. And that's what I'm pointing to. That deep relaxation is to actually find out where it already is. Then there's a freedom that allows for the dynamic expression without making the mistake of trying to change it to match with a false idea of what's necessary for okayness, because the okayness is already recognized. So that's the invitation. And so throughout, and fortunately now it's already 26 minutes in, so there'll be that much less blah, blah, blah. But for the rest of the blah, 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 when in doubt, if you notice there's any distress in your experience, any concern, worry, unpleasantness, whatever, then just remember active relaxation. Just notice that you are, and notice that common denominator, which is always present, even in deep sleep. Notice how profound of a relaxation that is. And just notice that's actually always here. It doesn't get rid of the dynamic stuff. So the dynamic stuff may still be going. There may still be all the concerns, the worries, the strains, the discomforts, all those habits may still be here. But what is possible through this invitation is that you can start to notice that there's something that is unconcerned, and that you are already that. And in contrast, what you can start to see is that the habit, the usual way, is to try and strain to get all of this dynamic stuff under control. And that just leads to more of the same thing that you're already feeling threatened by. So even though it's a very different strategy than the one that we normally employ, turns out that when you actually sincerely apply it, you'll get finally different results. So again, just keep noticing that underneath and underlying all of the experience, there's a continuous presence that's not, you don't have to strain for it. You don't have to grasp for it. You don't have to do anything for it. It's just when you keep letting go, you'll notice it's here reliably, which is the good news. Because again, if you have to do it, then it just produces anxiety. You can produce certain states that you might perceive as desirable states, but you can't sustain them indefinitely. And so no matter how delightful the state might be, the problem there is always that there's a sense that I have to keep doing something in order to maintain it, and you can't sustain it forever. And you might forget how to do it, because that also happens. So better, in my view, and in the view of many who are much more intelligent than me, is that wouldn't it be great if we could just notice what's already here, that's already whole, already complete, already okay, already more than okay, that we don't have to do anything for, and that's unaffected by all of the other stuff. So sometimes there are really delightful states, and this underlying okayness is unaffected by that. It doesn't become attached to that. It doesn't have any need for that. It's delightful when the state is delightful, but it doesn't matter. if the delightful state vanishes, then fine. And similarly, when the dynamic state is, in a relative sense, down, so that we say, oh, it's not so great, it's also unaffected. So this is what's possible. So with all that said, the topic for today is that see if I didn't come up with a catchy way to express it. So we'll see if I can give a good, simple summary of it. That what you experience is, I'll just put it in the only way that I can presently, which is that what you experience is 100% your responsibility. It's entirely uh, a product of your conditioning and your beliefs, and that your conditioning and your beliefs are entirely within you, that they're within your sphere of influence. And so this is very good news, because it means that when you properly understand it, and have the develop the right relationship with your experience, then you can no longer be a victim. And that's a very wonderful thing, because it frees you from anxiety. If you think about it, just for a moment, reflect on your experience and notice, what are all the problems that you experience? Just notice, what's the common uh, thread in all of the problems that you experience. And I'll tell you what I think the answer is. That you, to some degree, feel like a victim, that you don't have the ability uh, to adequately protect yourself. Put it that way. You don't have the ability to adequately protect yourself. Something or someone external to you might be able to do something that will cause you harm. You might think of it, some of them, in different ways, but if you look at it through that lens, I think you perhaps could see that that is kind of an underlying theme. Whatever it is. So if you say, you got a health problem, well, so what's the health problem really? The health problem is a fear that something somehow might happen to you, or might be happening to you, that um, could harm you, and you don't have the ability to control that. If you say you have a financial problem, well, same kind of thing, right? You're perceiving that somehow there's something external to you that it might be able to harm you by uh, limiting your access to whatever it is that you perceive you need for okayness. So relationship problems has to do also with the sense of victimization, that somebody else has the ability to limit your access to what it is that you're wanting, the love, the harmony, the peace, the happiness that you want. So most of the time, this is my observation. It's not just my observation, though. This is an observation that's been made by many people much more intelligent than me, which gives me some pretty good confidence. If I can make the observation, and then people who are much more intelligent than me throughout time have also made this observation, there's likelihood that it might be true, but you have to look for yourself in your own experience. But it's been pointed out many times that we're actually dealing with, in reality, we're dealing with our own inner perception only. We project that externally, and we imagine that it's all of these external things, the external people, conditions, circumstances, and so forth. And so we have a whole story about it. And then based on our story, we then continue that narrative for ourselves about how we're going to solve the various problems that we're imagining that are existing out there in our story. So people have been, for a very long time, people have been trying to solve the problem in that way and really have not seemed to succeed. I mean, if you take a look around, I don't think you'll find many people who've succeeded in that. Certainly on a large scale, humanity has not succeeded very much in that. Same basic problems going on, that have always been going on. Sense of yeah, the injustices and poverty and hardships that and cheating, lying, stealing, killing, beating, I mean, these kinds of things, same basic problems. So it would benefit us to see things in a different way. I would propose, and that's why I'm proposing this today. Because if we keep doing the same thing, if we keep trying to solve our problems in the same way, we're going to get the same kinds of results that we've always gotten. And if we tell the truth about it, those results have, both on a large scale, on a mass scale, and on an individual scale, which is what most matters to us, really, is the results have been lackluster at best. So if we can see that and tell the truth about it, then it might give us the courage, maybe entirely just out of desperation, because we see that if we continue to do the same thing, we're going to get the same results, and those have been not adequate. Then we see, okay, I have to do something different. So perhaps I can have the courage to follow what I can see of the truth. So we have to start to look within ourselves and study and see what is really going on. So again, all of the problems that we experience have to do with projecting something external, and it has to do with projecting that something or someone has some power over me that might result in harm to me. And so now I'm afraid, and I'm going to feel compelled to take actions. But the problem is that all of that's happening in a story, and the story is based on, at best, it's based on incomplete knowledge, but really, in truth, it's based on just fantasy, and not a good fantasy. Clearly not a good fantasy, because we're imagining and projecting all kinds of problems and threats out there. Just from the basic kinds of things, like somebody might not love me if I don't meet the conditions that I believe that they have for giving me love, and I think I need that love. Or if I don't do the things that I think I have to do in order to get the things that I think I need, then I won't feel safe or happy, but I don't really want to do the things that I think I need to do in order to get those things. So we just create all of these problems where we feel unhappy, and we feel trapped, and we feel threatened. But I'm proposing, the good news is that actually we have complete responsibility, and when we accept that complete responsibility, then finally we can experience a real change, and that change is happening from within rather than trying futilely to control the external circumstances. But this seems risky because we've invested a lifetime, and really many lifetimes, because even if you don't believe in past lives, at the very least you can see that this human society consists of many generations. It wasn't, this human society didn't appear overnight. I mean, it's the product of many, many, many generations. And so there's an enormous investment over time of many generations of this idea of I'm a victim, and there's all these things out there that I need to control in order to be able to be okay. So it seems risky at first to go against that because of the momentum of it, because it's so ingrained into our brains and into our DNA, really. I mean, it's just very deeply ingrained. And so that's why I say we have to see that what we've been doing is very ineffective, at least ineffective in terms of giving us what we want. On the other hand, it's terribly effective at giving us more of the same, which is what we don't want. But we have to see that. We have to see that what we've been doing, what we've been believing, is giving us what we don't want. And when we can see that clearly, then it naturally becomes clear that we are foolish to continue to do the same thing. Strangely, even upon seeing that, we will usually, I think, tend to continue to do the same thing, even though we know that it's foolish to do it. But that's the power of habit. So habit is very powerful, for better or for worse. So we want to just start to see that and then act intelligently so that we can start to put in place good habits that will produce what we do want. And don't despair just because habit has power. Instead, see, wow, isn't that amazing that habit has power? And presently I'm suffering from the power of habit that's holding in place bad habits. But really the power of habit is neutral, and it can equally be used to empower good habits. So what would be good habits? Well, a good habit would be the habit of accepting that I have the power, because I'm not a victim. I have the responsibility for my experience, because my experience is all within me. My experience consists of my thoughts, my beliefs, my imagination, my senses. All of that's internal to me. Again, the habit is going to say, well, that can't be true. It's got to be out there. It's got to be something objective. But we have to just keep looking and seeing, no, it's not out there. It's entirely here. So the more that we can see that, the more we see the pain of projecting it out there, because then we have no power. We're total victims in that scenario when we believe that there's something outside of us, whether that's time or other people or circumstances, genetics, any of these things that we usually blame for our misery and our troubles. Whenever we believe those things, then we've given away our power. If you say, well, I'm suffering because of something that happened in the past, what are you going to do about that? That's just a setup for ongoing suffering, because you say, well, it's just happened. I'm a victim of time. You say, I'm a victim of circumstance. This is just how it is. I was born into this family, and this is just how I'm a victim. I'm a victim of my genetics. I inherited this condition from my family, whatever. Any of these things, I'm victim of my culture because I don't, I'm in a bad culture. I'm surrounded by badness, and so I there's nothing I can do about that. Well, all the various ways that we imagine it, all of them leave us powerless, but we can choose just by acknowledging, well, that's no good. It's really no good at all. What do I want to do that for? What do I want to be playing this victim game for? I mean, even if it was delusional, even if what I'm proposing is delusion, it's a better it. So what? The other way is delusion too, but this is a much better delusion. And actually, what I'm proposing is not delusional at all, but you just have to see it in the right way. So you can start to see that if you're believing that you're a victim, which is if you believe that you have a problem, then you're believing you're a victim. So you want to see that much. If I have a problem, big or small, and we've all got plenty of problems, so I'm not saying shame on you. I mean, I'm describing my own experience too. We imagine we have problems. Some of those problems we think are big, some of them we think are small, but whatever. You imagine you have some kind of problem, some kind of sense of not enough, lack, disappointment, discouragement, whatever. And whenever you notice that, you can just start to notice, oh, if I'm perceiving that I have a problem, then I'm perceiving that I'm a victim. I'm imagining somehow that I'm a victim. I've got some kind of victim story going that somehow I don't have the power in this situation. Somebody else or something else does. Well, so start to question that because you want to see that that's no good. That's not a good way to live because then you're just, what are you doing? Then it's just sort of a waiting game where you're just hoping that circumstances will change, but you don't have any ability in your own understanding. You don't have any ability to change that. So you're just waiting and hoping, keeping your fingers crossed, holding your breath. Please let it change. And it leads to superstition. Then you start to hope that maybe you have some kind of weird power, not a real straightforward power, but some kind of weird power that if you can just somehow do the right thing, like keep your fingers crossed in the right way, then somehow that's going to help you. But it wouldn't be a real help because it's not a real power. Because even if it worked out in your benefit, you might do the wrong thing the next moment and then you lose it. So the real power is to actually connect with the real source so that you know who you are, what the real power is, and how you can use that power reliably rather than these weird sorts of superstitions which we all fall victim to. So see that you don't want to play victim anymore. You don't want to entertain superstition anymore. You want to have true peace in your life. You want to have true calm in your life. You want to have true responsibility in your life. You don't want to any longer give the power away. So recognize that much. And then you want to see that whatever you're experiencing, if you perceive that it's a problem, I mean, even if you don't experience it as a problem, but you're mostly interested in problems for now, what you're experiencing as a problem is um, is is not actually a problem other than in your imagination. In apart from your imagination, it simply is. It's not a problem. It simply is. And what it is not even what you think it is. Because at a most basic level, again, what is it? It's vibration. It's vibration appearing as light. It's vibration appearing as sound. It's vibration appearing as thought. It's all vibration. So it's not a problem. It's just vibration. And the meaning of it is not even inherent in it. It's simply vibration. So the meaning is something that we're applying to it. And this is good news because this means that it's pliable, it's plastic. We can alter it. It's not fixed. So we can begin to allow it to change by questioning it. So you just start to question whatever it is and start to see how, I mean, in the process of questioning, you have to start to see what it is that you're believing, the story that you're constructing. So you can just simply take a look and see, okay, if this is just all vibration, just see if you can notice that it's vibration. What is your experience? What is it actually? What does it consist of? There's light, there's sound, there's uh, other kinds of sensation that we interpret as tactile and olfactory and things like that. But it's all vibration, and thoughts, which are also vibration. And thought is sort of a broad band of vibration. So there's imagination kind of vibration, and there's vibration that's like a subtle kind of sound. It's an internal thing that we would call thought in terms of like sentence, words, um, other kinds of thought. But all of it is vibration. See if you can just notice that that's true. And then there's just out of habit, we start to apply a meaning to it. Says, I like this, I don't like this, this is a threat to me, this is good for me, things are working well, they're not working well. That's all meaning. This is my friend, this is my enemy. So when we, so whatever we're experiencing, when we imagine that it's external to us, we imagine that a good portion of it at least is external to us. But it's all that what we consider to be external is really just a projection of these internal meanings and internal sensations, internal vibrations. So notice then what's happening is that when we have a problem, we're imagining that there's a problem. And then what we do out of habit normally is then we imagine the problem, and what happens right away? Just notice it in your experience. Just imagine a problem, some problem that you think you have, whatever that is. And notice what's happening internally. Can you notice there's a reaction? You imagine the problem. This is happening inside of you. You're imagining the problem. And then also inside of you is a reaction. The reaction does what? It gives a sense of solidity to the problem that you're imagining. So imagine that you're in some sort of virtual reality, some sort of simulation, and it's a very sophisticated simulation. And in that very sophisticated simulation, uh, a hard ball like a baseball, you see this hard ball coming close, getting bigger and bigger and bigger, which gives the sense that it's getting closer. And then imagine that in this simulation, though, there's no you are fully aware that it's a simulation, and then it you no longer see the ball. It's like it's getting bigger and bigger and close, seems to be closer and closer, and seems to occupy the full visual field, and then it vanishes. So there's no sense of solidity to it. It was simply a visual phenomenon. So there's no sense of solidity. There's no sense of impact. There's no pain. It was just this visual phenomenon. That's it. But now imagine the same uh, virtual reality simulation, And same thing, image seems like a hard ball getting bigger, 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 and you think it seems to be getting closer. And then as soon as it gets to the point where it seems like as though it would be in contact with whatever you're imagining you to be, there's this impulse, this sharp impulse that registers as a tactile thing. And you say, ow! All of a sudden it seems to have substance to it. So in this same kind of way, when we're imagining we have a problem, so if you this is a trick, like a little technique that you can use. It's very effective. If you just keep imagining your problem, but you continue to relax, whatever it is, it doesn't have to be some, a baseball hitting you kind of problem. It could be that whatever it is, you have some kind of problem that you imagine is a financial problem, or you have a problem that you imagine is a relationship problem, or a problem that you imagine is a health problem, whatever it is. But just imagine the problem and then just relax. Just relax completely, like you're in deep sleep, that kind of relaxation. It takes the sense of substance away from it, because there has to be this secondary thing, the reaction, to give a sense of solidity to it. Otherwise, there's no sense that it's your problem. There's no sense that there's a you who's experiencing the problem. There's awareness of it, but there's no you to take receipt of it. There's no you who's being impacted by it, because there's no you reacting. So it's that reaction, that inner flinching, that inner tensing up, that gives the sense that this is a problem. Otherwise, it's just this thing happening, and you start to have a sense of a little bit of distance from it, because you can start to actually observe it. You see, oh, okay, what's actually happening? Some thoughts are happening, some imagination is taking place, but there's no reaction to it. So you just imagine the thing, but then just relax. So, if it's a relationship problem, you see, you see the look on their face that they give you when you're experiencing this problem. But just relax completely. So it's just a look. That's it. And then even you just keep doing that, and you start to see, what is that look really? The more you relax, the more you see it gets looser and looser, lighter and lighter. The look starts to change. Is it even the look that you thought it was? Certainly it doesn't have the meaning you thought it had. So it just gets looser and looser and lighter and lighter. It's like that image of the baseball. Now it's just vanishes. It's like, okay, there it was. It seemed like it was going to make impact, but there's no impact. And you just keep repeating that over and over. You just keep imagining the problem, but just relax. So there's no one taking receipt of the problem. There's no impact. There's no reaction. Now you're free. Because you see, the game that's been played, it's a terrible game we've been playing, is we imagine the problem, then we react to the problem, and then we say, oh, it's a real problem. And then again, we imagine the problem, and then we react to the problem. We say, yeah, it's not just a real problem, it's a big real problem. Let's try it again. You imagine the problem, you react to the problem, you say, holy cow, this is a very serious real problem. This is so severe. I have to think about it some more. And you imagine it again, and then you react again. It just keeps seeming more and more real, more and more solid. But we can play the same game in reverse by imagining the problem and relaxing. So there's no impact, no reaction. You notice that you're totally free. And then lo and behold, you are free to imagine whatever you want, or not imagine anything. I mean, that's also available to you when you realize that you're that free. Why do you need to imagine anything? But why not, on the other hand? Because imagination is not a bad thing. It's not, imagination isn't problematic. Imagination is um, a it's a quality of, it's a divine gift. I mean, obviously, this whole, you know, so the divine, which is supreme intelligence, which is the, it is creating all of this. What do you think? It's a mistake? No, it's not a mistake. It's just a misunderstanding. You've been gifted with all of these divine gifts of creativity, but we've, out of ignorance, misused them and fallen into attachment and identification in a negative way. But we can, from a wakeful presence, we can feel free to play. Why not? So then you could start to imagine what you actually want. So if you've been imagining scarcity, lack, I don't have enough, I don't have, not enough, whatever, not enough love, not enough money, not enough health, whatever it is. Well, once you deconstruct that and you see that you've just been playing that game, imagining it and then reacting, and you start to take that apart, just using the process I've described, you imagine the problem, but you relax. So there's nothing, you start to realize I'm free. There's no problem. I don't have to freak out about any of this. It's just my imagination. Then you're free also to start to imagine, what do you want? Well, abundance, safety, happiness, peace. And you actually know what those are because they're your qualities of yourself as you really are. So you start to use your imagination to express those authentic qualities of yourself. So you use the imagination to do that. What does that feel like? What does that look like? You just imagine that, and then you'll start to see that you actually start to experience that. This is very, in that part of it, that use of the imagination for what to imagine what you want, to create what you want, is the basis of a lot of this the law of attraction teachings. And there's some truth in it. Obviously, I'm confirming that, but a lot of the time, those teachings miss something really fundamental because they overlook the part where you relax into the recognition of yourself as abundance, as freedom, as peace, because you can certainly use that creative power to imagine all kinds of prosperity and everything. You can imagine your way to the Lamborghini, but with the same underlying distress that you had before. So I wouldn't recommend that. I would recommend first use the same power of imagination in a positively deconstructive sense, to deconstruct the bad habits of victimization so that you can recognize directly your underlying freedom that's already the case. So that you're no longer hurting yourself with the wrong use of imagination. And then you can use the power of imagination in a constructive sense, in a positive constructive sense, but without attachment, because you already know that you are that which you are, which you desire. You already know that you are that freedom and that wholeness and that abundance that you are, that you desire. And so you're just using this divine gift of imagination in a positive, constructive sense, in alignment with who you are, without attachment, because there's no sense that you need something external in order to give you what you want. You already are that, and you're simply expressing in congruence with that. So conveniently, that's all I have to say, and it's at an hour, so that works out very well. Hopefully that made sense. I thought it made sense. I thought we got there eventually. It's sort of dicey for a bit, but that's sometimes how it is. So for those who are here live, happy to stay on for Q&A. And for those who are watching it on YouTube, this will be the end of the video.